In the quiet town of Eldridge Hollow, life moved at a gentle pace. The streets were lined with old oak trees that swayed softly in the breeze, and the air always carried the faint smell of fresh bread from Susan Carter's bakery. It was the kind of place where everyone knew each other by name, where doors were left unlocked at night and where nothing much ever seemed to happen. But beneath its calm surface, Eldridge Hollow held secrets that no one dared to speak about. Olivia Carter, an 8-year-old girl with bright green eyes and a mop of curly brown hair, loved exploring those secrets. She had a way of asking questions that made adults uncomfortable. Why is the sky blue? She'd ask her dad, Ryan, while he worked on cars in his garage. Or, why do we dream? She'd wonder aloud to her mom, Susan, as they kneaded dough together in the kitchen. Her curiosity was endless, and though most people found it charming, some thought she asked too many questions for such a young child. One sunny afternoon, Olivia decided to venture beyond the usual boundaries of her playtime. Instead of staying close to home, she wandered toward the edge of town where the woods began. The forest there was thick and mysterious, with tall trees whose branches twisted like gnarled fingers. Few people went into the woods because they believed it was haunted, or so the stories said. But Olivia wasn't afraid. To her, the woods were full of possibilities. As she stepped over fallen leaves and ducked under low-hanging branches, Olivia felt a strange sense of excitement. She imagined herself as an adventurer, discovering hidden treasures or meeting magical creatures. Just as she was beginning to think the woods weren't so special after all, she heard a sound, a soft rustling, like fabric brushing against bark. Startled, she turned around, expecting to see one of her friends playing a prank on her. But instead she saw a man. The man looked odd. His clothes were patched and worn, and his face was lined with wrinkles, making him appear much older than anyone else Olivia knew. Yet there was something about his eyes. They sparkled with a wisdom that didn't match his ragged appearance. He smiled gently at her and took a step closer. "Hello," he said in a voice that was both warm and distant, like the hum of a faraway melody. "You're not supposed to be here." Olivia tilted her head, studying him carefully. "Who are you?" she asked. "My name is Diddy," he replied. "And who might you be?" "I'm Olivia," she announced proudly. "I live in Eldridge Hollow. Do you live here too?" Diddy chuckled softly. "Not exactly. I travel." "Travel where?" Olivia pressed, her curiosity piqued. "To places you wouldn't understand yet," Diddy said cryptically. Then, without warning, he leaned down and whispered something into her ear. It was so quiet that even Olivia barely heard it. All she caught were fragments, words like key and balance. When she opened her mouth to ask what he meant, Diddy straightened up and gave her a small wooden carving. It was shaped like a spiral and covered in tiny symbols that looked like scratches. "Keep this safe," he told her. "It will guide you when the time comes." Before Olivia could respond, Diddy turned and disappeared into the trees. She called out after him, but he was gone, leaving only the faint scent of pine and the weight of the carving in her hand. Confused, but intrigued, Olivia clutched the object tightly and headed back home. When she arrived, her mother, Susan, was busy arranging freshly baked loaves of bread on the counter. Seeing Olivia's flushed cheeks and wide eyes, Susan frowned. "Where have you been? You've been gone for hours." "I was in the woods," Olivia admitted, holding up the carving. "Look what I found." Susan's expression darkened as she examined the object. "Where did you get this?" she demanded. "A man gave it to me," Olivia explained. "His name is Diddy. He said it's important." Susan exchanged worried glances with Ryan, who had just walked in from the garage. "Did he say anything else?" Ryan asked. "He whispered something," Olivia said, "but I couldn't hear it all." Ryan knelt beside her and placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Listen, sweetheart, you shouldn't go into the woods alone. People say strange things happen there." "But Diddy wasn't scary," Olivia protested. "He was nice." Still, Susan and Ryan couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. They tucked Olivia into bed early that evening, hoping she'd forget about the whole thing. But as she lay there, staring at the spiral carving on her bedside table, Olivia couldn't stop thinking about Diddy's words. What had he meant by balance? And why had he given her the carving? Unbeknownst to the Carters, their concerns were shared by others in Eldridge Hollow. Across town, Captain Samuel Hayes of the Royal Guard had arrived earlier that week. A stern-looking man in Budweas, his mid-30s with sharp features and piercing blue eyes. Samuel was known for his strict adherence to protocol. He rarely deviated from orders, and his reputation for discipline preceded him wherever he went. Samuel's presence in Eldridge Hollow was unusual. The Royal Guard typically handled matters of national importance, not small-town affairs. Yet, here he was, patrolling the streets and questioning residents about recent events. Most dismissed his inquiries as routine, but Emma Dawson, the town librarian, grew suspicious. Emma was a wiry woman in her 50s with glasses perched on the end objects. By the next morning, news of Olivia's encounter with Diddy had spread through Eldridge Hollow like wildfire. The small town was buzzing with whispers and speculation. Some people thought it was just a child's overactive imagination, while others believed it might be something more sinister. At the bakery, Susan Carter found herself fielding questions from customers who stopped by for their daily bread. Did Olivia really meet someone in the woods? Mrs. Harper asked, leaning on the counter with wide eyes. I heard he looked like a ghost. Susan sighed, trying to keep her tone calm. She says she met a man named Diddy. He gave her a strange carving and whispered something to her. But I'm sure it's nothing to worry about. Mrs. Harper didn't look convinced. Still, you should be careful. People say the woods are dangerous. As the day wore on, Susan couldn't shake the unease growing in her chest. She kept glancing at the spiral carving which now sat on the kitchen table. Ryan noticed her discomfort and tried to reassure her. It's probably just some old trinket, he said. Kids find weird things all the time. But Susan wasn't so sure. There was something about the carving that felt different. The symbols etched into its surface seemed to shimmer faintly in the light, as if they were alive. And then there was Olivia herself. Since returning from the woods, she'd been acting strangely. She hummed tunes no one recognized, drew patterns on scraps of paper that resembled the carving, and muttered words in languages neither Susan nor Ryan understood. Concerned, Susan decided to visit Dr. Laura Bennett, the town doctor. Laura was a kind woman in her 40s with curly red hair and a reassuring smile. When Susan explained what had happened, Laura listened carefully, but admitted she didn't have any answers. It could be stress or anxiety, she suggested. Sometimes kids react to new experiences in unexpected ways. But if her behavior changes drastically, let me know. On her way home, Susan ran into Jack Monroe, their neighbor and a retired schoolteacher. Jack was an older man with thinning gray hair and a habit of wearing cardigans even in warm weather. He had always been fond of Olivia and often joined her on stargazing nights with his old telescope. When Susan told him about Diddy and the carving, his brow furrowed. That's odd, Jack said. There are legends around here about strange figures appearing in the woods. They call them whisperers. Supposedly, they show up during times of trouble. Susan frowned. You don't think there's any truth to those stories, do you? Jack shrugged. Maybe not, but it wouldn't hurt to keep an eye on things. Meanwhile, Captain Samuel Hayes continued his investigation. He hadn't come to Eldridge Hollow expecting anything unusual, but the rumors of a mysterious man in the woods caught his attention. Determined to get to the bottom of it, he paid a visit to Emma Dawson, the town librarian. Emma was known for her vast knowledge of local history and folklore, and Samuel hoped she could shed some light on the situation. Emma greeted him warmly when he entered the library, a cozy building filled with dusty shelves and the smell of old books. Captain Hayes, she said, adjusting her glasses. What brings you here? I've heard some interesting stories about the woods, Samuel began. People mention a figure called the Whisperer. Do you know anything about that? Emma hesitated before nodding. Yes, there are tales. Old ones. The Whisperer is said to appear during moments of great change or danger. Some believe it's a guardian, while others think it's a harbinger of doom. Samuel raised an eyebrow. And you believe these stories? I didn't used to, Emma admitted. But lately there have been reports of strange lights in the forest and animals behaving oddly. It's hard to ignore. Intrigued, Samuel pressed further. Has anyone seen this whisperer recently? Emma lowered her voice. A little girl claims she did. Her name is Olivia Carter. She says he gave her something. A carving. Samuel's interest deepened. He thanked Emma for her help and left the library, his mind racing. Whatever was happening in Eldridge Hollow, it was bigger than he'd anticipated. Protocol dictated that he report back to headquarters immediately, but something held him back. He wanted to see the carving for himself. That evening, Samuel knocked. On the Carter's door, Susan answered, looking surprised to see him. "Can I help you, Captain?" she asked cautiously. "I'd like to speak with Olivia, if that's all right," Samuel said. "I'm investigating recent events in the area." Susan hesitated but eventually invited him inside. Olivia sat at the kitchen table staring intently at the spiral carving. When Samuel introduced himself, she looked up with wide, curious eyes. "What's that you're holding?" Samuel asked, nodding toward the carving. Olivia held it out for him to see. "Diddy gave it to me. He said it's important." Samuel examined the object closely. Like Susan, he noticed the faint shimmer of the symbols and felt a strange energy emanating from it. "Do you remember what Diddy whispered to you?" he asked gently. Olivia shook her head. "Just pieces. Something about a key and balance." The word balance sent a chill down Samuel's spine, though he didn't let it show. He thanked the Carters and left, his thoughts swirling. Whatever this carving was, it wasn't ordinary. And if the legends Emma mentioned were true, then Eldridge Hollow might be facing something far beyond his understanding. Over the next few days, tensions in the town grew. More sightings of strange lights were reported, and some residents claimed to hear eerie music coming from the woods at night. Samuel received orders from headquarters to detain anyone connected to Diddy, including Olivia. For the first time in his career, he hesitated. Something about this mission felt wrong. One night, unable to sleep, Samuel drove to the edge of the woods. He parked his car and stepped outside, listening intently. The forest was eerily silent, save for the occasional rustle of leaves. As he walked deeper into the trees, he saw something that made his blood run cold. Dozens of shadowy figures moving silently among the trunks. Their movements were unnatural, almost hypnotic. Before he could retreat, one of the figures turned and locked eyes with him. Samuel froze, overwhelmed by a sense of dread he couldn't explain. The figure didn't approach, but its gaze lingered, as if studying him. Then, as suddenly as they had appeared, the shadows melted away into the darkness. Shaken, Samuel returned to his car and sat there for a long time, gripping the steering wheel tightly. He knew then that whatever was happening in Eldridge Hollow, it wasn't something the Royal Guard could handle with brute force or strict protocols. This was something else entirely, and it was only beginning. The next morning, the quiet of Eldridge Hollow was shattered. The Royal Guard descended on the town in full force, their black uniforms and polished boots standing out against the soft colors of the countryside. Jeeps rumbled down the narrow roads, kicking up dust, and armed soldiers set up checkpoints at every corner. It was clear that something big was happening, though no one could say exactly what. Captain Samuel Hayes stood near the center of the chaos, trying to keep his composure. Orders had come directly from headquarters: detain anyone connected to Diddy, search every home, and secure the woods. But as soldiers began questioning residents and demanding access to private property, Samuel felt a growing unease. He'd been in the Guard for years, following orders without question, but this time felt different. Something about the way people looked at him, fearful, angry, confused, made him second-guess everything. Olivia Carter became the focus of the operation. Soldiers arrived at her house early, asking Susan and Ryan to bring her outside for questioning. Susan refused, clutching Olivia protectively. "She's just a child," she shouted. "What do you want with her?" "We need to understand what happened in the woods," one of the soldiers replied coldly. "This is protocol." Samuel stepped forward, his voice firm but calm. "That's enough. Let me handle this." The soldier hesitated but eventually backed off. Samuel approached Susan and knelt down to Olivia's level. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said softly. "I just need to know more about Diddy and the carving. Can you help me?" Olivia nodded slowly, still holding the spiral carving tightly in her hand. "Diddy said it's important," she repeated. "He said it will guide me." "Guide you? Where?" Samuel asked. "I don't know," Olivia admitted. "But I think I have to go back to the woods." Susan shook her head fiercely. "Absolutely not. You're not going anywhere near those woods again." Samuel agreed with her, but deep down he wondered if Olivia was right. The carving seemed to pulse faintly in her hands, almost as if it were alive. Whatever it was, it clearly meant something, and Samuel couldn't ignore the possibility that it was connected to the strange figures he'd seen in the forest. As the day wore on, tensions in the town escalated. Residents gathered in small groups, whispering angrily about the guard's intrusion. Jack Monroe, the retired schoolteacher, joined Emma Dawson outside the library, where they watched soldiers searching through people's belongings. "This isn't right," Jack muttered. "They're treating us like criminals." Emma nodded grimly. "Something bigger is going on here. We need to figure out what it is, and fast." Later that evening, Samuel found himself pacing in his temporary quarters, a small room above the town hall. His mind raced with questions. Who or what was Diddy? What was the purpose of the carving? And why had he seen those shadowy figures in the woods? He knew he couldn't follow protocol blindly anymore. If there was any hope of understanding what was happening, he would have to take matters into his own hands. That night, after most of the soldiers had settled into their posts, Samuel slipped out of the town hall unnoticed. He made his way to the Carter's house, where Susan reluctantly let him in. "What do you want now?" she asked, her voice tinged with frustration. "I need your help," Samuel said. "And yours too, Olivia." Olivia looked up at him curiously. "Are you going to take me to the woods?" "Not yet," Samuel replied. "But we may not have much time. The guard is planning to arrest you tomorrow. If we're going to find answers, we need to act quickly." Susan crossed her arms. "And why should we trust you? You're part of the guard." "I've broken protocol already by coming here," Samuel admitted. "If my superiors find out, I'll be in serious trouble. But I believe there's more to this than they're telling us." After a long silence, Susan finally relented. "Fine, but if anything happens to Olivia, I'll never forgive you." With Susan's reluctant blessing, Samuel, Olivia, Jack, and Emma devised a plan. They decided to sneak into the woods under the cover of darkness, using the carving as a guide. Jack brought along a flashlight and a notebook, while Emma carried an old map of the area she'd found in the library archives. Together, they hoped to uncover the truth before the guard could stop them. As they prepared to leave, Olivia clutched the carving tightly, feeling its warmth against her palm. She didn't fully understand what was happening, but she trusted Diddy's words. The carving would guide her. It had to. The group set out just after midnight, moving quietly through the sleeping town. The woods loomed ahead, dark and foreboding, but they pressed on without hesitation. The air grew cooler as they ventured deeper, and the sounds of crickets and rustling leaves filled the silence. Every step felt heavier, as if the forest itself was resisting their presence. Jack led the way, shining the flashlight ahead to illuminate the path. "Stay close," he whispered. "We don't want to get separated." Emma consulted her map occasionally, though it was difficult to match the landmarks with the dense trees around them. "According to this, there should be a clearing up ahead," she said. "Maybe that's where we'll find answers." As they walked, Olivia began humming softly. It was the same tune she'd been humming since meeting Diddy, a melody that seemed to echo faintly in the air around them. Samuel noticed it too and exchanged a glance with Jack, who simply shrugged. None of them understood the song, but it felt familiar somehow. After what felt like hours, they finally reached the clearing Emma had mentioned. It was a wide open space surrounded by towering trees, bathed in silver moonlight. In the center stood a large stone altar, its surface etched with symbols similar to those on the carving. Olivia gasped when she saw it. "That's it," she said, pointing. "That's where we're supposed to go." The group approached cautiously, their footsteps crunching softly on the dry grass. As they drew closer, the carving in Olivia's hand began to glow brighter, casting a soft light over the altar. Symbols on the stone lit up in response, pulsing in rhythm with the carving. "What's happening?" Susan whispered, her voice trembling. "I don't know," Samuel admitted. "But whatever it is, it's not natural." Before anyone could react, a low hum filled the air, growing louder and more intense. The ground beneath their feet vibrated, slightly, and the symbols on the altar started spinning, forming intricate patterns. Then, without warning, a blinding flash of light erupted from the center of the clearing. When the light faded, Diddy stood before them, his tattered clothes fluttering in the breeze. His expression was calm but grave as he looked at each of them in turn. "You shouldn't have come here," he said, his voice echoing strangely. "But now that you have, there's no turning back." "What do you mean?" Samuel demanded, stepping forward. "Who are you? What is this place?" Diddy ignored him and turned to Olivia. "You brought the key," he said, gesturing to the carving. "Good. Now it's time to use it." "Use it for what?" Olivia asked, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. "To open the gateway," Diddy replied. "But beware, the cost is high. Someone must stay behind to ensure the balance is maintained." The group exchanged uneasy glances. "What kind of gateway?" Emma asked nervously. "One that connects our world to another," Diddy explained. "It has remained sealed for centuries, but recent disturbances have weakened it. If it opens uncontrolled, both worlds will collapse." "And why does Olivia have to be involved?" Susan snapped, stepping protectively in front of her daughter. "She doesn't," Diddy said. "But the key chose her. That means she has a role to play." Samuel clenched his fists, torn between duty and instinct. "There has to be another way." "There isn't," Diddy said simply. "The choice is yours. Open the gateway and risk losing someone, or let chaos consume everything." No one spoke for a long moment. The weight of the decision hung heavily in the air, pressing down on all of them. Finally, Olivia broke the silence. "I'll do it," she said firmly. "If it's the only way to save everyone, I'll stay behind." "No," Susan cried, pulling her daughter into a tight embrace. "You can't ask her to do that." "It's her destiny," Diddy said gently. "But it doesn't have to be her alone. Another can take her place." Samuel stepped forward, his jaw set. "I'll do it," he said. "I'll stay behind." Everyone turned to look at him, stunned. "Are you sure?" Jack asked. Samuel nodded. "This isn't about following orders anymore. It's about doing what's right. If staying behind means protecting this town and this world, then so be it." Diddy studied him for a moment before nodding. "Very well. Place the key on the altar." Olivia hesitated, tears streaming down her face, but eventually placed the carving on the stone. The symbols flared brightly, and the hum grew deafening. A swirling vortex of light and shadow appeared above the altar, pulsing with energy. "Step back," Diddy instructed. "It's time." As the others retreated, Samuel took a deep breath and stepped forward. The vortex pulled at him, drawing him closer until he disappeared entirely. The light faded, leaving the clearing eerily silent. For a moment, no one moved. Then Olivia turned to Diddy, her voice barely above a whisper. "Will we ever see him again?" Diddy's expression softened. "Perhaps, but for now, the gateway is sealed and the balance restored." With that, he vanished, leaving the group alone in the moonlit clearing. The group stood in stunned silence, staring at the empty space where Diddy had been. The clearing felt colder now, as if the warmth of the gateway's light had been sucked away. Olivia clutched her mother's hand tightly, her small frame trembling. Susan wrapped an arm around her daughter, tears streaming down her face. Jack and Emma exchanged uneasy glances, unsure of what to say or do next. Finally, Emma broke the silence. "We should head back," she said softly. "It's not safe to stay out here." No one argued. They turned and began retracing their steps through the woods, moving slowly and quietly. The journey back felt longer than the trip to the clearing, as if the forest itself was stretching out to keep them within its grasp. Shadows seemed darker, and every rustle of leaves made them jump. None of them spoke. There was nothing left to say. When they finally reached the edge of the woods, the first light of dawn was beginning to break over Eldridge Hollow. The town looked eerily peaceful, untouched by the chaos that had unfolded just hours before. Soldiers from the Royal Guard were still stationed at various points, but their numbers seemed smaller now. It was as if the events in the clearing had drained some of the urgency from their mission. As they approached the Carter's house, Susan stopped and turned to the others. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I don't know what we would have done without you." Jack nodded solemnly. "We're all in this together, but I think it's best if we keep what happened to ourselves, for now." Emma agreed. "The guard will ask questions. We need to be careful about what we say." Susan hesitated but eventually nodded. "All right, but Samuel, what do we tell them about him?" "The truth," Jack said firmly. "That he defied orders to protect us. He deserves that much." With heavy hearts, they parted ways. Susan and Olivia went inside while Jack and Emma returned to their homes. Neither of them slept that morning. Instead, they lay awake, replaying the night's events in their minds, wondering if they'd made the right choices. By mid-morning, the town was abuzz with rumors. Soldiers patrolled the streets, questioning residents about the sudden disappearance of Captain Samuel Hayes. Some claimed they'd seen him heading toward the woods late at night, while others speculated that he'd abandoned his post. Headquarters sent investigators to Eldridge Hollow demanding answers. Among those questioned was Olivia. Two stern-looking officers arrived at the Carter's house, asking her to recount everything she knew about Diddy and the carving. Olivia answered truthfully but carefully, omitting details about the gateway and Samuel's sacrifice. She described Diddy as a kind man who gave her the carving and whispered cryptic words, but she avoided mentioning the altar or the vortex of light. The officers didn't seem satisfied, but they couldn't find any concrete evidence linking Samuel to the woods. Without proof, they were forced to label his disappearance as inconclusive and withdraw from Eldridge Hollow. Their departure brought little relief to the townsfolk, however. The memory of Samuel's bravery and the mystery surrounding his fate lingered in everyone's minds. In the days that followed, life in Eldridge Hollow slowly returned to normal, or as close to normal as it could get. Susan reopened the bakery, though her hands trembled as she kneaded dough and arranged loaves on the counter. Ryan tried to distract himself by working long hours in the garage, fixing cars and tinkering with old engines. Olivia, meanwhile, became quieter, spending most of her time drawing pictures of the spiral carving and humming the strange melody she'd heard in the woods. Jack and Emma continued their research, determined to uncover more about the legends of the Whisperer and the Gateway. They spent hours poring over dusty books in the library, piecing together fragments of forgotten stories. One tale caught their attention, a legend about a guardian who sacrificed himself to seal a portal between worlds. According to the story, the guardian remained trapped on the other side, ensuring the balance between dimensions was preserved. "It sounds like Samuel," Emma said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Do you think he knew what he was getting into?" Jack shook his head. "I don't know, but I think he did it because he believed it was the right thing to do." Their findings only deepened the mystery. Why had Diddy chosen Olivia? What exactly was the balance he kept talking about? And what lay beyond the gateway? These questions haunted them, but they had no answers. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Olivia wandered to the edge of the woods. She didn't go in. She promised her parents she wouldn't, but she stood there for a long time staring into the shadows. In her hand, she held a sketch of the spiral carving, drawn from memory. The real carving was gone now, left behind, on the altar when the gateway closed. As she gazed into the trees, she thought she saw a flicker of movement, a figure standing just out of sight. Her heart skipped a beat and she called out, "Diddy?" There was no response, but she could have sworn she heard a faint whisper carried on the wind. It wasn't words exactly, more like a feeling, a sense of reassurance. Whatever it meant, it made her smile. When she returned home, her parents were waiting for her in the living room. Susan looked worried, but Ryan gave her a small, encouraging smile. "How are you holding up, kiddo?" he asked. "I'm okay," Olivia replied. I think Samuel is happy where he is. He saved us." Susan hugged her tightly, tears welling up in her eyes. "You're probably right. He was a brave man." That night, as Olivia drifted off to sleep, she dreamed of the clearing. The altar stood tall and glowing, surrounded by swirling lights. In the distance, she saw Samuel standing near the gateway, his expression calm and resolute. He waved at her, then turned and walked into the light. When she woke up, she felt a strange sense of peace. She didn't know what lay ahead for Eldridge Hollow or for herself, but she knew one thing for certain. The world was full of mysteries, and sometimes sacrifices had to be made to protect it. Unbeknownst to anyone, Diddy watched from the shadows of the woods, his ancient eyes reflecting the first rays of sunlight. He had fulfilled his duty, guiding the key to its rightful place and ensuring the gateway remained sealed. But he also knew that balance was fragile, and the forces threatening it were patient. For now, Eldridge Hollow was safe. But how long would it last? Only time would tell. Weeks passed, and Eldridge Hollow settled into a fragile sort of calm. The Royal Guard had withdrawn completely, leaving behind only rumors and unanswered questions. Life in the small town resumed its usual rhythm, but the events of that fateful night lingered in the minds of those who knew the truth. For Susan and Ryan Carter, it was impossible to forget. Every morning, as Susan baked bread and Ryan worked on cars, they couldn't help but think about Samuel Hayes, the man who had sacrificed himself to protect their daughter. Olivia, too, carried the weight of what had happened. She tried to act like her old self, running through the streets with her friends and playing games in the backyard, but something inside her had changed. She often found herself staring at the woods, wondering if Samuel was still out there, standing guard near the gateway, just as he'd promised. Sometimes she thought she heard his voice in the wind or saw flashes of light among the trees, but when she looked closer, there was nothing. Jack Monroe and Emma Dawson continued their research, though they kept it quiet. They didn't want to draw attention from outsiders, especially not the Royal Guard. Late at night, they met in the library, poring over old books and maps, searching for clues about the gateway and the world beyond it. One evening, while flipping through a dusty tome, Emma stumbled upon a passage that sent chills down her spine. "It says here," she whispered, pointing to the page, "that the gateway isn't just a door between worlds. It's also a kind of balance scale. If one side tips too far, both worlds collapse." Jack frowned, leaning closer to read the text. "So, what you're saying is, Samuel isn't just standing guard, he's holding everything together?" Emma nodded slowly. "Exactly. And if he ever lets go, or if the gateway opens again, it could mean disaster for both sides." The realization weighed heavily on them. They debated whether to share this information with the Carters, but ultimately decided against it. Susan and Ryan were already struggling to cope with what had happened. Adding another layer of worry wouldn't help. Instead, Jack and Emma vowed to keep watch over the woods, ensuring no one disturbed the clearing where the gateway lay hidden. Meanwhile, deep within the forest, Diddy remained vigilant. Though invisible to most, he moved silently among the trees, keeping an eye on the altar and the symbols etched into its surface. The gateway was sealed, for now, but he knew it wouldn't stay that way forever. Forces older than time itself were at work, testing the boundaries between worlds. Sooner or later, they would try to break through. One evening, as twilight painted the sky in shades of orange and purple, Diddy stood near the edge of the clearing. His gaze drifted toward the horizon, where the faint glow of Eldridge Hollows lights flickered in the distance. He thought about Olivia, the little girl who had carried the key, and Samuel, the man who had taken her place. Both had shown courage beyond measure, but their roles in this story were far from over. As if sensing his thoughts, the air around him shifted. A soft hum filled the clearing, growing louder until it became almost unbearable. The symbols on the altar began to pulse with light, casting eerie shadows across the ground. Diddy stepped back, his expression grim. He recognized the signs immediately. Something or someone was trying to force the gateway open. Before he could react, a figure emerged from the swirling light. It wasn't human, nor was it entirely solid. Its form shimmered like heat waves rising off pavement, shifting constantly between shapes. When it spoke, its voice echoed unnaturally, as if coming from multiple directions at once. "The balance is weakening," it said. "Soon, the gateway will fall." Diddy narrowed his eyes. "Not while I'm here." The figure laughed, a sound that sent shivers down even Diddy's spine. "You are but a guardian. Your strength is finite. Ours is infinite." With that, the figure vanished, leaving behind a faint trace of darkness that clung to the air like smoke. Diddy sighed deeply, knowing the threat was real. Whatever forces sought to disrupt the balance were growing stronger. He needed help, but there was no one left to call upon, not without risking the lives of those in Eldridge Hollow. Back in town, Olivia began experiencing strange dreams. At first they were vague and fleeting, filled with images of swirling lights and shadowy figures. But as the nights went on, the dreams grew clearer, more vivid. In them, she stood in the clearing, facing the glowing altar. Samuel appeared beside her, his presence warm and comforting despite the coldness of the surrounding forest. "You did well," he told her one night, his voice gentle but firm. "But your part isn't over yet." "What do you mean?" Olivia asked, her heart pounding. "I thought I gave the key to you." "You did," Samuel replied. "But the key isn't just an object. It's a responsibility, one that passes from person to person. You may need to take it up again someday." Before Olivia could respond, the dream faded, leaving her alone in the dark. When she woke up, tears streamed down her face. She didn't understand what Samuel meant, but she knew one thing for certain: the gateway wasn't done with her. Susan noticed the change in her daughter almost immediately. Olivia seemed distracted, her bright green eyes clouded with worry. When Susan asked what was wrong, Olivia hesitated before finally admitting, "I've been having dreams about Samuel and the woods." Susan's heart sank. She wanted to tell Olivia that it was all over, that they could move on with their lives, but she couldn't bring herself to lie. Instead, she hugged her tightly and said, "Whatever happens, we'll face it together. Okay?" Olivia nodded, though doubt lingered in her mind. Jack and Emma, meanwhile, discovered something unsettling during one of their late-night research sessions. While examining a map of the area, they noticed faint lines radiating outward from the clearing like spiderwebs. These lines weren't natural. They seemed to connect various points of interest throughout Eldridge Hollow, including the bakery, the library, and even Jack's house. "What does it mean?" Emma asked, tracing the lines with her finger. "I don't know," Jack admitted, "but it feels like the gateway's influence is spreading, like it's reaching out, preparing for something." Their conversation was interrupted by a loud knock on the library door. Startled, they quickly hid the map and opened the door to find Ryan Carter standing outside, looking pale and anxious. "We need to talk," he said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. "Something's happening in the woods." Ryan explained that earlier that evening, he'd been working late in the garage when he heard strange noises coming from the direction of the forest. At first he thought it was just animals, but then he saw flashes of light, bright, unnatural bursts that lit up the sky. He rushed home to tell Susan, but she was already asleep, so he came straight to the library instead. Jack and Emma exchanged worried glances. "We'll check it out," Jack said, "but we need to be careful. Whatever's going on, it's probably connected to the gateway." Together, the three of them grabbed flashlights and headed toward the woods. As they approached, the air grew colder, and an oppressive silence settled over the forest. The usual sounds of crickets and rustling leaves were gone, replaced by an eerie stillness. When they reached the clearing, they found Diddy waiting for them. "You shouldn't have come," he said, his tone grave. "It's not safe." "What's happening?" Ryan demanded. "Why are there lights in the sky?" Diddy gestured toward the altar, which was pulsing with a dim, ominous glow. "The gateway is under attack. Something is trying to break through." "Can you stop it?" Emma asked, her voice trembling. "I can hold it off for now," Diddy replied. "But I can't do it alone. Not for much longer." The group fell silent, the weight of his words sinking in. They all knew what it meant. The fight wasn't over. Whatever peace Eldridge Hollow had enjoyed was temporary, a fragile illusion masking the storm brewing just beyond the veil. As they stood there, watching the altar flicker and hum, Olivia's voice echoed in their minds. Her dreams, her connection. To the key, it wasn't coincidence. The gateway had chosen her, and sooner or later it would call her back. The days that followed were tense and uneasy. The people of Eldridge Hollow went about their lives as best they could, but the shadow of what had happened in the woods loomed over them. For Susan and Ryan Carter, every sound at night made them jolt awake, fearing another visit from strange lights or whispers in the dark. Olivia, meanwhile, became quieter than ever, retreating into herself as her dreams grew more vivid and unsettling. One morning, while helping her mother bake bread, Olivia suddenly froze, staring at the dough in front of her. Her hands trembled, slightly, and she whispered, "He's calling me." Susan stopped kneading and turned to her daughter. "Who's calling you, sweetheart?" "The gateway," Olivia replied softly. "It wants me to come back." Susan's heart sank. She wanted to deny it, to tell Olivia it was just her imagination, but she knew better. Something bigger was happening, something none of them could ignore any longer. That evening, after Ryan returned home from the garage, Susan gathered everyone, together in the living room. Jack Monroe and Emma Dawson joined them, their faces grim with shared understanding. "We can't keep pretending this isn't real," Susan said, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. "Whatever's happening out there, it's not going away." Emma nodded. "We've been watching the woods closely. The lights are getting brighter, and the lines on the map are spreading further. It's like the gateway is pulling energy from the town itself." "What does that mean?" Ryan asked, his brow furrowed. "It means we're running out of time," Jack replied. "If we don't act soon, the gateway might open again, and this time we might not be able to stop it." Olivia sat quietly through the conversation, clutching a sketch pad where she'd drawn dozens of spirals resembling the carving. Finally, she spoke up. "I have to go back." "No," Susan exclaimed, reaching for her daughter's hand. "You're not going anywhere near those woods again." "But I'm the one who brought the key," Olivia insisted, her voice trembling but firm. "If I don't do something, everything will fall apart. Samuel stayed behind to protect us, and now it's my turn to help him." The room fell silent. No one knew how to argue with her logic or her courage. After a long pause, Jack sighed heavily. "She's right. If anyone can figure out what's happening, it's her." Susan looked at Ryan, tears welling up in her eyes. He placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "We'll go with her," he said. "We won't let her face this alone." That night, under the cover of darkness, the group set out for the woods once more. They moved cautiously, flashlights cutting through the thick shadows as they made their way toward the clearing. The air felt heavier this time, almost suffocating, and an unnatural chill settled over them. When they reached the edge of the clearing, they saw the altar glowing brightly, its symbols pulsing in sync with a low, rhythmic hum. In the center of the clearing stood Diddy, his tattered clothes fluttering in an invisible breeze. His expression was grave as he watched them approach. "You shouldn't have come," he said, echoing his earlier warning. "We didn't have a choice," Susan replied, stepping forward. "Tell us what's happening." Diddy hesitated before speaking. "The forces trying to break through the gateway are growing stronger. They're testing the barrier, searching for weaknesses, Samuel has been holding them back, but even he can't last forever. Then what do we do? Emma asked, clutching the old map tightly. You must strengthen the seal, Diddy explained. But it requires a sacrifice, a bond between worlds. Someone must take Samuel's place. No, Olivia shouted, stepping forward. I won't let anyone else get hurt because of me. Diddy knelt down to her level, his ancient eyes filled with both sadness and resolve. It doesn't have to be pain or loss, he said gently. Sometimes a bond is formed through love and trust. You carry the essence of the key within you, Olivia. If you focus your strength, you can create a new balance, one that holds without needing someone trapped on the other side. Olivia stared at him, her mind racing. She didn't fully understand what he meant, but she trusted him. Taking a deep breath, she nodded. Okay, I'll try. The group formed a circle around the altar, each person placing a hand on Olivia's shoulders as she stepped closer to the glowing stone. The symbols flared brighter, responding to her presence. Closing her eyes, Olivia focused on the memories of what had brought them here. The kindness of Diddy, the bravery of Samuel, the love of her family, and the support of her friends. As she concentrated, the hum grew louder, vibrating through the ground beneath their feet. A warm light began to emanate from the altar, spreading outward in waves. The oppressive chill lifted, replaced by a sense of calm and unity. Slowly, the swirling vortex above the altar began to shrink, its edges stabilizing until it disappeared entirely. When the light faded, the clearing was silent once more. Olivia opened her eyes, blinking against the brightness of the moonlight. Diddy smiled faintly before turning to the others. It's done. The gateway is sealed, for good this time. What about Samuel? Susan asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Diddy's expression softened. His sacrifice wasn't in vain. He gave you the time you needed to find another way. And now, thanks to Olivia, no one else will have to bear that burden. Before anyone could respond, a soft glow appeared near the altar. Out of it stepped Samuel, looking disoriented but otherwise unharmed. He blinked, taking in the sight of the group gathered around him. What happened? He asked, his voice hoarse. You did your part, Diddy said simply. And now you're free. Tears streamed down Olivia's face as she ran to Samuel, throwing her arms around him. Thank you, she whispered. For everything. Samuel hugged her tightly, unsure of what to say. He glanced at Diddy, who gave him a small nod before fading into the shadows. Without another word, the mysterious guardian vanished, leaving the group alone in the quiet clearing. Over the following weeks, life in Eldridge Hollow slowly returned to normal, or as close to normal as it could get. The Royal Guard never returned, and the townsfolk eventually stopped talking about the strange lights in the woods. Susan reopened the bakery, baking loaves of bread with renewed energy. Ryan fixed cars with a smile, grateful to have his family, safe and whole. Olivia resumed her childhood adventures, though she often gazed toward the woods with a knowing look. Jack and Emma continued their research, documenting everything they'd learned about the gateway and the legends surrounding it. They kept their findings hidden, ensuring the knowledge would remain safe for future generations. Occasionally they visited the clearing, checking to make sure the symbols on the altar remained dormant. As for Samuel, he chose to stay in Eldridge Hollow, unable to return to the Royal Guard after everything that had happened. He found work helping Ryan at the garage, forming a bond with the Carters that felt like family. Though he rarely spoke of his time guarding the gateway, his actions spoke volumes. He was determined to protect the town that had welcomed him. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Olivia wandered to the edge of the woods. She didn't go in, but she stood there for a long time, listening to the rustle of leaves and the chirping of crickets. In her pocket, she carried a small drawing of the spiral carving, a reminder of everything she'd been through. As she turned to head home, she thought she heard a faint whisper carried on the wind. It wasn't words exactly, more like a feeling, a sense of gratitude. Smiling softly, Olivia whispered back, "Goodbye, Diddy." And with that, She walked away, ready to embrace whatever lay ahead, not just for herself, but for the world she had helped save.